us, and we also are thankful for the opportunities that lie ahead of us. I pray that this evening be profitable for all those in attendance, and I pray that you guide our steps as we look towards our lives and careers after college. It's in your name that we pray. Amen. Welcome on, guys. This is our first meeting of the semester, so I hope you guys are excited. This is the Pre-Law Society. I just want to introduce myself briefly. I'm Will Teasma. I'm the president and founder. I wanted to start the Pre-Law Society just as an opportunity for all of us students who are interested in law to get together, to meet with one another, kind of just see what the road ahead is for classes here. So I hope you guys find this meeting helpful. I also want to give you guys an opportunity to meet our executive team. So first, I'm going to let you guys meet Becca.
Hi everybody, my name is Becca Meikle. I am just the secretary, so I send out things like your email. I brainstorm with these guys about different questions or things we want to try, new things, old things, all kinds of things. That's pretty much all I do. I do want you guys to meet our new Vice President, Benjamin. He's very important to our team.
They say. All right, my job is to kind of run the meetings here and make sure that everything transitions smoothly, make sure that everybody feels welcome coming in, and hopefully the people come back. So tonight, it is my privilege to introduce our first guest speaker of the 2021 fall semester. She's come on behalf of Liberty School of Law, and having worked there for 11 years, she's pretty qualified to represent them well. She began this career with a master's and bachelor's degree at the Political Science, Marshall University. She switched to Liberty's JD program, was able to finish that up, and then got hired on by Liberty as to help students be able to succeed in law school. Now she's the Associate Dean of Admissions. Associate means she's quite familiar with the paperwork and processing aspects of the law school, and so she's going to give us a little bit of a glimpse into what happens behind the scenes, where we all want our papers to get through. Now, to give us an overview of Liberty specifically and an insight on law school in general is Ms. Susan Patrick.
So many of you all here and interested in a pre-law society. It's actually one of the things that can help set you apart on a law school application. I saw many of you today. I was in the display, I can't get words out, I'm sorry, in the display room. So I'm glad to see even more people this evening. It's been a long day. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Liberty University. It is a Christian institution. It's been around 50 years. We celebrated our 50th year this year. But the law school has not been around 50 years. Our first class graduated in 2007. I graduated from law school in 2010, and I have a very unique story that I won't bore you with all the details. But after law school, they actually hired me to be the director of academic support, and then I started our writing center, so I became the director of the Center for Legal Writing. And then I have a weird situation where I know everyone who's graduated from the law school. I teach, so I know a lot about the curriculum. And so they're like, hey, you know what? You might be really good at admissions since you kind of dabble in it all. So I became the Associate Dean for Admissions and Financial Aid for the School of Law. I teach Lawyering Skills, which is our first year writing course, but we offer 6 semesters of Lawyering Skills. So when you graduate, you'll actually know how to practice. That's not true at every law school, so I encourage you to look into that in any of the law schools that you're looking at. Some law schools may have 1 semester of legal writing. They might have 2 if you're lucky. So I encourage you to look at those law schools that you're thinking about and look at the courses that they require, the courses that they offer. So admissions. Everybody wants to know about admissions, how to get into law school. There's not a secret. There's no secret sauce, I promise. If there was, I'd tell it to you. I'm brutally honest sometimes, okay? So with every law school in the country is going to look at 2 major things, LSAT and GPA. So if you don't know what the LSAT is, it's the law school admissions test. You know how you have to take the ACT or the SAT? You still take ACTs and SATs? Okay, good. Right? So the LSAT is the law school admissions test. It's administered by the Law School Admissions Council. So LSAC is the council that administers it, and LSAT, SAT, is the exam. So if you're like me and finance finances were always a concern when you're a student. I don't know, some people may be independently wealthy, which is awesome. But I could not afford to take an LSAT prep course because it was a lot of money, and I just didn't have it at the time. I was a full-time student and a full-time worker, so I worked about 40 hours a week. Fortunately, my father passed when I was about 19 years old. So in order to help make ends meet with my mom and I worked. So for me, my extracurriculars were working. So what LSAC has done is they've recognized that a lot of people may be in that same boat as me, and they don't have access to a company like Kaplan to do a LSAT prep course. So they've developed a program called Khan Academy. Some of you all may have used Khan Academy before. Yeah. So there is a free LSAT prep called Khan Academy on LSAC.org's website.
Can you spell that for everyone?
Sure, K-H-A-N.
Since you teach writing, we figure you can spell.
Don't ask me to diagram a sentence, that's all I ask. So Khan Academy, K-H-A-N, but if you go to LSAC, LSAC.org, you're going to find out about the LSAT, but you're also going to see some of the free prep materials that they have. You can buy simple books, so like I think we were talking earlier, and Professor Trout, he was telling some students earlier today that there are actually some prep books in your all's library, which if you're like me, that's a great resource, right? So you can use that resource, and you can also purchase old exams, so old LSATs, on the LSAC website. So they're pretty reasonably priced, so you can keep your cost down. Now, there are other companies, so there's Kaplan, there's PowerScore, there's a lot of different LSAT prep companies. Matter of fact, one of our current 1Ls, she said, and I love this, I should also share that I am the faculty chair of our Women's Law Society, so yeah. She has actually started an LSAT prep company that's geared towards women. So when she was studying for the LSAT, she realized she learned best from other women. So she has started her own LSAT prep company and is doing phenomenal. She's got so many people who are knocking down her door, and the people who work for her knocking down their door, that they're actually having to turn a few people away if they register a little bit late. So there are all kinds of companies out there to help you with LSAT prep. You just have to put in the work. Don't try to take the LSAT prep cold, or the LSAT course, or the LSAT cold. Prep for it. A lot of students will say, oh, well, I just want to get a baseline and kind of see where I am. We look at your highest score, but not every law school does that. There are some law schools that are going to average your scores. So let's say you don't study at all and you get a 148. Okay, it's respectable. But let's say you then study and all of a sudden you're getting a 158. That's a big difference. So the difference between a 148 and a 158, so you're 10 points, so they're going to average you, and you'd be at an average of 153 at some law schools. We don't do that. We actually look at your top score, and that's what we use to determine scholarship. And we also look at your undergraduate GPA. So do your best, study, put the time in, and you're going to see great reward on the other side. So the other thing you want to think about, other than the LSAT, is your undergrad GPA. So I know some of you are seniors, some of you are juniors. But for those of you who are freshmen and sophomore, really focus on keeping that GPA high, especially your freshman and sophomore year, because that's when your GPA is going to move the most. So after you get so many credits, your GPA just doesn't move quite as much if you get an A versus an A- or a B+. So keep focused now as a freshman and sophomore on keeping your undergraduate GPA. So why do I care so much about undergrad GPAs and LSATs? Why does it matter? I'm going to do great in law school. Yes, but we determine scholarship based on your undergrad GPA and your LSAT score. So we have to have something as you're entering into law school to figure out what type of scholarship we can offer you. So at our law school, we actually offer you scholarship when you're admitted. So when you get that great little letter that says, congratulations, you've been admitted, that's the letter you want, right? But we also send you your scholarship packet at that time. Some law schools don't do that. They might tell you you're admitted, and then they'll say, we will send you any scholarship offer on April 1, or whatever date they say. So some law schools do it different. Keep that in mind, especially if you're applying to very large law schools. So if you're interested in applying to somewhere like Harvard or Yale. I don't know. I didn't. I knew I wasn't going to get in, right? But you can apply to a large law school. You're going to have to apply very early. And so if you're a junior, you need to start considering taking the LSAT soon. If you're a freshman or sophomore, now's the time to maybe pick up some resources. If you're a senior and you haven't taken the LSAT, you definitely want to get on that very quickly, okay? So those are the two major things you need to think about. So those are the two entering statistics that we look at. But we know you're not a statistic. So for us, we also consider you as a person. So keep in mind, we've never met you. I mean, I've met you, right? But the admissions committee isn't going to get the opportunity to meet you when they're reviewing your application. So we use the personal statement as a way to get to know you. We ask two questions. First, why do you want to be a lawyer? And please don't tell me it's to make a lot of money. Okay? Some of the best personal statements I've read have been absolutely nothing about the actual practice of law. They've been about how they want to use their law degree to help others, to help their communities. I read one personal statement that was about their friend who had been assaulted and the trauma that they had gone through and how they saw that this had hurt them so much, but not just physically, but emotionally. And they wanted to be the person who could stand for them, who could help represent them in a civil trial, or they wanted to be the person who says, you know what, I'm going to represent the state, and I'm going to seek justice against the perpetrator. But just keep in mind that criminal trials, they're not about the victim. They're actually about, right, I see some heads nodding. Yeah, they're about the person who's been accused. So we have to always consider, what does this person want to do with their law degree? If it's you don't actually want to practice law, but you want to do something else with a law degree, tell us about it. It makes you unique. And then the second question we ask is, why Liberty? Don't forget to answer that question. Why do you want to go to Liberty? A lot of students are very honest and they say, well, I heard Liberty offers high scholarships. Okay, but what if we get two equally situated applicants? They both say they want to help people. And the one person says, I want to go to Liberty because they appreciate X, Y, and Z about the program. They've shown us that they've gone and done a little bit of research about us. They may say, I really like your high bar passage rate. Or, I really like the 6 semesters of practical experience that I'm going to have after I walk out of your program. Or, I've even had some say, and this one always cracks me up, I really like that you have a women's law society and that they're very active, and I follow them on social media. We got one of those last year, and I looked at the committee and I was like, see, it works. They just laughed at me because they're my girls, you know, and they're probably the most active on social media. So, matter of fact, today I missed, it's Domestic Violence Awareness Day, and so our Women's Law Society, in order to bring awareness to it, they popped purple popcorn, because purple is the color of Domestic Violence Awareness Day. Popped purple popcorn, gave out sodas, and then just sort of had all kinds of literature out, just to bring people's awareness of it. So if you follow them on social media, you can see them. They're great. But, so you can even say that you really appreciate the Sports Law Society, or intellectual property claim. Do a little bit of research. So I'm sure we're not the only law school that asks that question. Do a little bit of research on that law school and find out why you're really interested in that program. Show them that you've done your research. So that's the main things that we're looking for. But here's another thing to consider. If you're a student who doesn't participate in sports, who doesn't work, show us that you've done something else. Show us that you've been in leadership in a pre-law society, that your evenings have been spent helping yourself develop as an adult, as a professional. So if you don't need to work, that's okay. That's awesome if you don't have to. Use extracurriculars to show us how you've spent your time. You can also volunteer. We've had some students who spent 10 to 15 hours a week volunteering, and they actually had a recommendation from their supervisor in the program that they would volunteer from. So do those extra things. Don't just expect your undergrad GPA your LSAT, and maybe your personal statement to speak for you. You can use other things to help show us who you are as a human being. And then that brings me to personal statements. Not personal statements, recommendations, sorry. We're going to talk about personal statements. So recommendations. We will accept up to 3, but we require 1. So a lot of students go to that one professor and they get that one recommendation, right? That one great professor you had. That's great, we love to see those. The ones that everyone thinks hold a lot of weight, so a member of Congress, so-and-so interned in my office. They were a great help to us, but they never speak about who you are. Those aren't really the best recommendations. I've seen some amazing recommendations from pastors. You would never think to ask your pastor for a recommendation, would you? But your pastor may have known you since you were a child. And can say, I've known them since they were a child, and I've watched them grow, and I've watched them grow into this great person who's going to be such an amazing member of our society. That can be really, really special and really persuasive for an admissions committee. So if you do have more than one recommendation, I do recommend having more than just one area. So if you have worked, have your supervisor at work write you a recommendation. Have a professor write you a recommendation. Consider your pastor. Consider someone that you've worked with in a volunteer situation. So you don't just have to have a professor. I encourage you to, but you don't just have to have a professor. So you gather all the information, right? You submit it to LSAC. So you guys have probably never thought about how you submit applications to law school, right? Unless you are in the process of doing it. So you don't actually submit an application to every law school, which is crazy, right? When you're going through undergrad, you probably had to submit an application to all the different schools that you want to. So LSAC is the repository for everything. You're going to mail everything off to LSAC. You're going to have your transcript sent there. You're going to have your personal statement sent there. You're going to have your letters of recommendation. Everything goes to LSAC. So then they collect it all. They put it all in this nice, neat little electronic folder, right? And then you'll go and look and say, where do I want to apply to law school? So it seems like this really weird process. Like, why wouldn't I just send Liberty my transcript? Well, imagine if you had to buy and mail a transcript to every law school you were thinking about applying to. That'd be a lot of transcripts, right? And if you're like my undergrad, they charge like $10 for the first transcript and then like $5 for every transcript after that. It's like, oh, that gets pricey really quick. So they put all of your information into one spot, and then you go in and you say, okay, I want to apply to Florida State, and I want to apply to Baylor, and I want to apply to Liberty, and then all you have to do is just take all that electronic information that they have all nice and neat for you, and you say, this is where I want this to go. I want this to go to Liberty, I want this to go to Baylor, I want this to go to Florida State. Easy peasy, right? Check your personal statements. Make sure the personal statement that goes to Baylor doesn't say, I want to go to Liberty University School of Law because I get one every year. Every year, and it always makes me giggle. Because it's an attention to detail. It's a little thing. But make sure you tailor the one that's going to Liberty or the one that's going to Baylor to those respective schools. But everything else stays the same. Liberty and Baylor may want an extra piece of information, so we may ask you if you're married and what the name of your spouse is, because we have a law wives group, and I use quotation marks because there's also some law husbands who get together, and they really create this nice little support group where they support one another and they become a nice community, because as much as law school is very challenging, it's also very challenging for spouses. Because you go from seeing this person a lot to seeing them very little because it's law school. So for the most part, all your applications are going to be very simple. So has anybody started that application process? Yay, I see one hand. Yay. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. It's really taxing at first, but once you've got your LSAT score, once you're ready to start applying, everything's already there. So then comes the hard part. Deciding where you're going to apply. Of course, I want you to apply to Liberty. I wouldn't be here if I didn't, right? But then you'll send your application off and it feels like it goes into the abyss. Just wait. So tell most students to expect 4 to 6 weeks of wait time. That's crazy in our very instant world now. To give you an idea, right now we are accepting applications, but we're not processing quite as many as we would like to because we're traveling. And our admissions committee is teaching right now, so over the next week and a half, we're actually going to slow down a lot with our travel, so we're going to start getting those applications back out to our admissions committee. So it really does take about 4 to 6 weeks to get an answer, especially toward the beginning of the application process. But that speeds up rather quick for us. Once we get all the applications starting to process, our admissions committee looks at each application individually. Some law schools like to process groups of them, especially some larger law schools that may get 2,000 or 3,000 applications. They don't want to make a decision on their admitted students until they get a group, sort of a nice, diverse group to where they can start making decisions. So we look at each one individually. We don't necessarily look at them a group. And we say, okay, how can we admit this student? Because we take the approach of, we want to admit every student because we love liberty and we would love for them to come here. But there are some decisions that have to be made. So unfortunately, we can't admit everybody. And sometimes the admission denials are due to someone not being where they need to be at that moment. So I'll give you a perfect example. So someone who's a 3.8 undergrad GPA has performed well in undergrad. If they have a 148 LSAT, we're going to do everything that we can do to try to figure out a way to get them into our class. Okay? Someone who has a 140 LSAT, there's a big difference in their skill set at this moment. That doesn't mean that they can't be a great attorney. It just means that their skill set at this very moment isn't where it needs to be. So they can go and work on their skill set, their logic skill set, and improve their LSAT score to demonstrate that their logic is improving, it's getting better. So depending on where you fall in that LSAT undergrad GPA, depends on, and of course, personal statements. It's always fun, especially when we get to the very end of our admission cycle. We'll only have a few spots left, which is very sad. And we'll have several applications that we're trying to fit. We'll have maybe a wait list group. And we're trying every which way to get them all here. And unfortunately, that's not always possible. So that doesn't mean that we don't necessarily want you. It just means that we may not be able to offer a seat to you. So if you get a wait list or a denial from somewhere, it doesn't mean that they don't want you. It just means that they may not be able to take you this year. So once we get the application, it goes to our admissions committee. They look at entering statistics, they look at personal statements. If your personal statement makes us care about you and what you want to do, it's very persuasive for us. I don't vote, I just process the applications. But I can tell you that for our admissions committee, personal statements are very, very persuasive. After that, they will make a decision, yes or no. Then you will get a letter from us. If it's an admit, you'll actually get an email from Ms. Phelps, who is our Director of Financial Aid, actually Coordinator of Financial Aid, and it'll be a nice little attached email or attached letter that says, congratulations, you've been admitted, and here's your scholarship. That's the reason it comes from her. So if you have questions about scholarship and other financial aid options, that way you can immediately contact her. So if you're admitted, and you're admitted early enough, we actually have what's called an admitted students weekend, where we actually fly you out to Liberty, and you can meet all of your potential classmates. It's a fun little weekend that actually coincides with our 1L moot court tournament. Has anybody done moot court? No. Oh, moot court is so much fun. Do you guys have moot court here? Oh, you guys started. So moot court. So you've seen trials on TV, right? Where you have this animated attorney who's like running around talking to the jury, presenting evidence. That's not moot court. okay? Moot court, if you've ever seen movies where it takes place at the Supreme Court, where you have the 9 justices sitting there, and the attorney is standing like this, good afternoon, may it please the court, I'm Patrick, and I'm here on behalf of the plaintiff, John Smith. Have you ever seen any attorney do that, or do you see more of this? Like, they're talking, doing this, and they're talking to a witness. That's not moot court, that's mock trial. Moot court, I like to think of it as high church. Don't put this on Instagram. It's very buttoned up. It's very attorneys talking to judges. Mock trial, you're talking to a jury. So you're more animated, you're trying to persuade them. You're doing all these things by presenting evidence. All that's done. We're now at an appellate level court, and it's all right here. You don't use your hands, you don't get emotional. I don't want to say you're a robot, but that's moot court. So our final round of our 1L moot court actually happens during our admitted students weekend. It is a ton of fun because I always get to tell the incoming 1Ls, you will be doing this next year. There will be 2 or 4 of you in the final round arguing before 9 actual judges. I don't mean that they're like 3Ls. No, I mean they're actually sitting judges and justices on various courts. Several of them are our alumni that come in for us, and they will grill the 1Ls. It's amazing. I love it. It's so much fun. It's an adrenaline rush, I promise you. If you've ever played sports and you're like, oh my gosh, that was so amazing after that game, right? That's moot court, okay? So we have that final round, but of course with that we also have panels with alumni. I always get some of our alumni to come in. I love them all, I know them all. I have a weird history with all our alumni. So they always love to come in and meet the incoming 1Ls. They remember when they were 1Ls. So does everybody know when I say 1L? Sorry, I just take that for granted. A 1L is what you call a first-year law student. So you're a 1L, a 2L, or a 3L. So, sorry, I should probably explain that. But, so we do that on that weekend. We have current student panels, and you can ask them questions. And then we also have a faculty panel, so you can ask them all the fun questions you want to know about what to expect from class. Of course, you'll get to sit in on a class, experience the Lynchburg area. So that's sort of the admissions process. And then you come into the summer, and this past summer we actually started something new through Microsoft Teams. We actually started a summer program. So we mailed out an actual book, yes, a real live book, not one on a Kindle or an iPad, about succeeding in law school to all of our admitted students and our confirmed students. And we did a fun summer prep program. And for those students who were admitted early, who applied early, it was really, really helpful. Don't wait to apply till May or June after you graduate. Apply early. So most application cycles will begin September 1, the year you want to start. So if you wanted to start this fall, the application cycle began September 1. So you don't have to apply on September 1. A lot of schools actually have what's called an early decision program. We do that. If you apply and are accepted by the end of December, usually around December 22nd, and you confirm by February 1, we have an incentive to get you to confirm early. That incentive this past year was free first-year books. And it's about $1,500 for your first-year books. So it's a pretty hefty incentive, right? Other law schools do different things. They might increase scholarship a little bit. Some may give you a discount on how much you have to pay to deposit. So every law school does something a little bit different. Some do what's called a binding early decision. So you have to promise them that you're not going to apply to any other law schools and that you're not going to confirm at any other law schools. We don't do a binding one. We want you to be where God wants you to be, and if it's not at Liberty, we want you to be in His will. So even if it doesn't, you don't come to us, we want you to be there. So that's our early sort of our process, your application process, where you go from thinking about law school to gathering all your information, sending it off to the law schools. They're going to review your application. Not every law school is like us. Some law schools have a couple of people in their admissions department who review applications. We actually have a committee of 4 faculty who review the applications and vote. Then after they make a decision, then you're gonna get a few resources, and then you start law school. I'll tell you, we have a 2-week orientation program, and it's fantastic. Law students come in and they're like, why do I have to do 2 weeks? Other law schools give you 1 day. Well, our orientation program is actually designed to help you know what to do the first day of classes instead of just, hey, here's where the bathrooms are. We'll tell you where those are too. But we're actually going to teach you how to be a law student. So how to really brief cases, how to think like a law student, not just like an undergrad, because it is a bit of a transition. So, did I confuse anybody, overwhelm anybody with a lot of information? I talk really fast. I'm sorry.
So what's the ideal date to have all of their paperwork finished and submitted? Would you say like before Thanksgiving of the year, of their senior year?
So, I mean, that would be best case scenario. We've already received some applications at this point. We're getting close to triple digits in terms of receiving applications. So those are, we call them gunners in law school. You know, the kids that always raise their hand 50 million times in a class and they're always engaged. I'm sure somebody in this room is one. I was one. So those are the ones that are going to be really proactive, on the ball. They might be applying to some top tier law schools where they have really early decisions. There are some law schools that have a February 1 deadline to apply. There's some law schools that are March 1. At this current time, we're at August 1 deadline. Do not apply that late. Let me say that again. Do not apply that late. 1, we start orientation 2 weeks before classes begin. I think this past year we started on like August 22nd or 23rd, whatever that Monday was. So go back 2 weeks and orientation began. So if you applied August 1, you'd have less than 7 days to literally get a decision, and it's going to take us a couple of days to get everything processed and over to our admissions committee. So best case scenario, you're getting an offer of admission on like August 5th, and you have to start orientation on the 9th. Don't wait. So I recommend, if you want to do early decision, Thanksgiving's a perfect time. Perfect time. If you're not looking to do early decision, I know most of you are probably what, freshmen, sophomore, juniors? Okay. So you're in a good spot. You can start thinking about it. For those of you that are seniors, start getting that stuff together right now, if you haven't already done it. Register for the LSAT, start taking it. I recommend, if you're not doing early decision by May, for us, you can apply. Not every law school will accept applications that late.
Is there a risk that scholarship money will already been expended by that point, though?
Not with us.
Not with you.
The way we do scholarship is different than some other law schools. Some other law schools have a pot of money, and that's all they got. So they may have, let's say, $2 million that has to be divvied up. That's the reason they're not going to give you a scholarship offer at the time of admittance. What we do is a little bit different. We give you a scholarship offer based on your entering statistics, and it comes at the time you're admitted, not based on the amount of money that might be in a certain pot. Now, as you get closer to the end of the cycle, some of that may have to get pulled back depending on how much scholarship is there. But that's the reason I say apply early. Apply early.
Yeah, I had a question for that. The scholarship money, because I was looking at your paperwork and you mentioned the honors program, and top 15% statistic and the law class. And
The law review.
correct. Now, how does that apply with people who aren't necessarily full ride scholarship to Liberty?
So, you mean if they're not in the honors program?
Yeah.
Or, okay. So, just to give you guys sort of an explanation of what he's asking about. So we have what's called an honors program, and it's for our highly qualified students. I think if you're a 158 with a 3.5 undergrad, or a 160 with a 3.25, or just a 165 LSAT or above, you would qualify for our honors program. So in order to stay in the honors program, you have to maintain being in the top 15%, and students with those entering statistics should be in the top 15% of our class. They've done the math and calculations and all that. So they also have to participate in law review and the honors opportunities. We just had one 2 weeks ago where they brought in two individuals from it's the Strategic Alliance, and I cannot remember. It's basically like the Chamber of Commerce. And they talked about professionalism and how to also network and do those types of things. So it was a great opportunity for our honors students to learn networking skills. So it's a great opportunity if you get the opportunity to be in the honors program. So honors students receive the highest scholarship offers. Makes complete sense, right? So the honors scholarship, in order to maintain the honors scholarship, you have to stay in the honors program. But here's the thing. What happens if you don't make it to the top 15%? That's everybody's question, right? Make sure this isn't on Instagram. So we've made the decision that we're not, if a student doesn't stay in the honors program, so let's say they don't even want to do law review so they wouldn't qualify for honors, we're not going to reduce their scholarship amount. Instead, it will not continue to increase as tuition may increase. So if tuition goes up 3%, they would stay at what their scholarship was last year. So it's not like we're punishing anyone for deciding not to do honors, but we're also not going to reward them for not doing honors, if that makes any sense.
All right, guys, let's show some appreciation for Dean Patrick for coming out tonight. She's also agreed to stick around for a few minutes. We have some questions for her, and then if you guys have any more questions, you can feel free to ask those. At the end, we'll move this out of the way real quick. Okay, so the first question I have, just as someone who is preparing my application, getting ready to send it in, what is the first thing that a school is going to look at when I send it in? Are my numbers on top? Is my personal statement the first thing that they're going to flip to?
So, this is a very honest answer.
Okay.
They're gonna look at LSAT and GPA.
Okay.
And they're gonna look to see if you fall into what they can make.
Mhm.
So, if you're applying early, you have a much higher likelihood of falling into their range. So you wanna look at, every law school has what's called a 509 report. So there's an ABA website, and I can get it for you guys, that actually, you can go in and find every law school's 509 report. What this report will tell you is what their LSAT range is, what their GPA range is, how many full tuition scholarships they offered, how many students lost their scholarship, how many students were academically dismissed, how many faculty they have. I'm trying to think what else is on that report. What their diversity is. Trying to think what else is on there. There's a whole bunch of information. But they give out this report so that students can actually go in, anyone who's thinking about law school, can actually go in and compare two law schools. So it's identical, every school, and you can literally put two up side by side and compare an exact number, which is amazing. The website also has bar passage and employment rates on there. So what I would do is I would go and look at any law schools, 25th and 75th percentile, what their median is on their LSATs and GPAs, and see if you fall in that range. You have a high likelihood. If you're higher, you have a really good chance, right? If you're a little bit lower, that doesn't mean it's enough. Because that means at least 25% of their class was below that number, that bottom number that they put in there. So if it says, let's say 150, 156, 158. So that means 25% of the class was actually above a 158. That means 50% of the class was above a 156, and 50% of the class was below. And then this bottom number, what I said?
150.
150, thank you. That means 25% of the class was below that. So let's say you have a 148, which I have no idea what your outside is. I'm just making that number up, okay? So let's say you have a 148, but you have a 3.98 GPA. That's really fantastic. That's an indicator of somebody may have just had a bad take on an LSAT versus somebody who has a 3.2 GPA. So just because you're a little bit lower doesn't necessarily mean that you may not get a yes from that law school.
does your committee differentiate at all? In other words, some schools are known to be pretty tough. In other words, someone graduating from PCC with a 3.8 has really earned it. Whereas there are other institutions where they're cream puff classes and they get that 3.8 really without having to earn it. Do you have any differentiation on that side of the scale? I'm curious.
Absolutely. So we will look at, let's say the student is a 3.4 economics major from PCC. You all have economics?
Not as a major,
Okay.
political science.
Okay,
is
political
our
science,
closest.
okay. So let's say they attended a great school like PCC and they majored in something tough. They're gonna take that into consideration because they're gonna look at the whole application. It's not just the LSAT and GPA. That might be the first thing that they do look at and say, okay, is this a student we can consider? Oh, well, they have a 150 LSAT. Okay, that's good, but they have a 3.3 GPA. The first thing I can hear one of our professors, he's from Kentucky and he's got that Kentucky thick accent. I love him and he would laugh when I do it. He'll say, but they went to this school with this major. And so that can be a factor. So if you do have a little bit lower of a GPA, that's okay. We'll look at those types of things. I can't speak for other law schools, but I know we do.
All right, so what is the ideal balance between a good GPA and that academic rigor that comes in? Do you look more at the content of the classes, more at how hard it was to make a good grade? How are we supposed to lay out in front of us a major that is not cream puff?
Right. Take classes that are going to force you to engage in critical thinking. So I was a political science major, so if, probably the majority of you are poli-sci majors, so you're my peeps. I also have a master's in political science, and my emphasis was in modern political thought. They loved it. I can actually go back and look at the notes. It's really fun. I did that for myself, to see what the committee said about me. I didn't have a great LSAT, but they looked at my program that I was in. We look at transcripts even. So if a student has taken a course in something really deep and something really thought-provoking and forcing you to think, like I had to read Marx and Foucault and John Locke and Mill and all of these deep thinkers, and we had deep conversations about what they were trying to communicate. And so they're reading this transcript and they're saying, oh, well, she may have got an A- in there, but she took a really hard class. I took constitutional law, and the professor, his name was Behrman, and the old adage was B for Behrman because no one got an A. But I was glad I took the class because it forced me to think. And so while they didn't say anything about that in the comments about my application, I took Constitutional Law 1 and Constitutional Law 2, which was civil rights. And they had the opportunity to see, oh, she took tough classes. We have actually had, right now we have a nuclear engineer who did not have the highest GPA in the world, but nuclear engineering is probably going to be a very difficult program. So, if you don't have the perfect GPA, that's okay. You don't need a 4.0. Just find that balance. Take the hard classes, challenge yourself.
Now, I know you kind of touched base on it just a little bit, but what are just a couple things or the most major things that set applicants apart on their resume?
So resume is a great thing. We don't require a resume, but we do encourage you to put it on there. We know you're to undergrad. We know that. If you've worked, put it on there. Even if it was at a dry cleaner. But tell us what you were responsible for. Did you have to manage multiple tasks at one time? On my resume, I put my retail job. But I explained that I was responsible for over X million dollars of diamonds every day. Literally had to count them. Side story, I'm sorry. My husband and I, we have this lake close to where we live, and there's this little platform in the middle of the lake, and these turtles get on it every day. And whenever we're in the car together, I'm like, oh, there's 8 turtles. And he's like, how do you count 8 turtles that fast? And I'm like, I had to count diamonds, y'all. I had to count diamonds. So if you have a job where you have to do something specialized, even if it's a job working here at the university or at the college, where you're responsible for making sure X, Y, and Z is done, put it on there. It can be It's come up several times with applicants by putting unique things. Also volunteer work, put that on your resume. Especially if there's something you're passionate about that you volunteer in. If you reference it in your personal statement, and then we can see that you volunteered for 3 years in something where you're not getting paid to do, that you've got a lot of responsibility in that, that can be very, very persuasive.
All right, guys, before Benjamin and Becca wrap us up, I wanted to give you guys an opportunity. If you have any questions for Dean Patrick, she'd love to field them right now, so please, if you have any, let us know.
My question is like, you were talking about the difficulty of courses and your major. How do you see pre-law and poli-sci and compared to like an engineering degree? I mean, obviously you said that you have to be a nuclear engineering. Like, is that going to set you apart in law in the school, or are you going to struggle in law school because you weren't taking certain courses?
So poli-sci will set you up well for law school, as long as you're taking critical thinking courses. So you can take a fluff course. Everybody knows this fluff course, right? I mean, maybe not quite as many here, but everybody knows those courses you can kind of skate through. But nuclear engineering is just, we're just going to look at it very different. Poli-sci, we're going to expect a little higher of a GPA versus a chemistry major or an engineering major. We might sort of forgive a 2.8 versus a poli-sci, maybe like a 2.2, 2.3. So you just have to weigh those things though. Yeah, and every law school is different. Some law schools may not accept anyone below a 3.4. I wouldn't know how to go there. Just do your best and take the courses that you enjoy, but challenge yourself. Don't worry about taking a course just to get into law school. Take the course that's going to challenge you to think more and to engage more critically.
For the person that didn't make the cut their first time through, what can they do in that 1 year's time before they reapply to make themselves more attractive?
So, improve the LSAT is generally where it's at. But there's also a really great thing, consider a master's degree. So there are so many online master's degree programs that are actually that you can complete in a year. Do a master's degree. I actually did my master's before, and I won't bore you all with all the details, but I went to law school twice. I was one of those rare exceptions, and I failed out of law school. And then the second time I was in law school, the Lord gave me an opportunity, and I got to excel. So I've done law school the wrong way, and I've done law school the right way. So that's the reason they hired me to be director of academic support. Does that make a little more sense, right? They hire somebody right out of law school. So the second time in law school, I actually got to do law review, which means you have to be in the top tier of your class. I got to do moot court, I got to do ADR, all of the fun things that I would have never had the opportunity to do if I had just scraped by in law school. So I went and did a master's program after being academically dismissed. Best experience of my life. Absolute best experience. I did a semester at the West Virginia legislature working for the Senate Judiciary Committee. I actually got to work on a bill where we helped women who were nonviolent offenders. We actually started a program where if they were pregnant when they came into their prison term and they were going to be released within 5 years, they would be able to keep their children with them in a dormitory style setting. And the program actually got to the point where women were coming out of the program and hiring the women who were coming out of the program. So they would come out and help other women. That's probably one of the best things I've ever gotten to work on in my life. But thinking through all of the details with the committee and the lobbyists and the people who were really trying to get this program off the ground, it gave me the ability to kind of consider that critical thinking that maybe I didn't have that skill polished when I went to law school the first time, but through taking courses, additional constitutional law courses and criminal justice courses, and there's things that challenged me even though I may not have gotten an A in it. That was really the difference. So a master's level program can really be helpful. And if you do really well in a master's level program, and maybe your undergrad GPA wasn't the best, while we cannot consider it for entering statistics, so that 509 report I was talking about, we will consider it in terms of being admitted to law school. So if you aren't the best undergrad, my GPA wasn't the best as an undergrad, but you have a really great master's GPA, it's really a great tool.
questions? Okay. Dean Patrick has agreed to stick around for a few minutes.
Sounds good.
Benjamin and Rebecca have a few announcements, so I'm gonna let them get to those, and then we will wrap up. Thank you guys.
Okay, everyone. So I actually just have a note of encouragement from one of our previous graduates, Sarah Williams. She's actually a 1L at Texas A&M, and we kind of asked, like, just what would her word of encouragement be to those who are looking into going into law. And she wrote back and gave us this little encouragement, so I'm going to read it for y'all. She said, "Howdy Pre-Law Society. First off, I commend you for being here tonight. Getting involved in student organizations like this is an excellent way to learn more about your field and showcase campus involvement on a resume. Take advantage of those opportunities whenever you can. Also, really invest in your walk with God now. Law school is an amazing experience, but regardless of whether you attend a secular or Christian law school, your beliefs will be challenged. Take time to read God's Word daily and build a deep, abiding walk with God." So we just want to commend you guys for being here and putting in this time into your future. And in this, she wanted to let you guys know to take advantage of opportunities to help look good on your resume. So one of those, Benjamin is actually going to come up and give a little segue into.
All right. Now, some of you may remember at the Legal Connection, I got up in front of everybody and told them about how we were starting a mentorship program. This is the night to kick off the full-scale program. Basic idea here is we want to be able to help each other to make good grades here, because we heard that GPA is important, and to support one another as a group, growing in those social skills and the spiritual skills that are necessary for succeeding as lawyers. So what we're asking is that upperclassmen or people who have skills in a certain field would be able to volunteer to be available for mentoring lowerclassmen. I've been running this with 1 or 2 mentees for the last couple weeks, and both of us are very pleased with the results. So what we're going to do is, Dean Patrick's going to be over here to answer any questions you might have, and she's first priority. But if you're interested in the program for mentoring, being a mentor or being mentored, you can come over here. I'll be there to answer questions and to get everything signed up and started. All right. This concludes our very first Student Pre-Law Society meeting, so be sure to come out next time to our November 18th meeting, where we have Judge Dixon coming to speak on a career on the bench. But for now, the meeting is adjourned. You have a great night.
Very cool. Yeah, well,
Actually, writing the paper right now. I'm sure she'll love talking to you. It's really cool. My sister actually
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's called prosody, and I just recommend looking at it.
Was involved in this, so yeah. Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Or you can like relearn everything. Okay. Okay, great. Oh yeah, I love it. Okay, yeah, sure. So if you ever get the chance to take it.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, it's like
My father was an engineer.